Okay. So we're going to talk about vision and strategy today. Exciting topic. Not a lot of people talk a lot about it. We just kind of get into the metrics, the execution pieces all the time, agile methodologies, but it's an important topic. So let's delve into it today. And one thing I do want to mention before we jump in is I lead my own sort of website with a lot of articles, knowledge articles, leadership oriented on productforlife.com. So feel free to go there, sign up for any new articles you want to get access to as and when I publish them. My goal is to educate the community. So this content is going to go on that website as well. So feel free to visit it. So with that, let's jump in. One of the core theses behind my approach with building products is what I call this as a percolation principle. And that's my own principle. There's no such word that exists. So what percolation it's built off of is three things: purpose, clarity, and execution. So percolation put together jointly. And when you think about how you build products out there, B2B, B2C, doesn't matter what it is. When you have a strong purpose and you bring clarity of that purpose to your organization, your partners, your customers, and you execute on that purpose with high quality, with data, you deliver great products with great experiences. You achieve product excellence, right? So that's the core thesis behind the products that I built, is that intersection point of purpose, clarity, and execution. But today, we're going to talk about purpose. And within purpose, really, there are two things that matter. Defining that purpose, right? It's defining a vision and defining a strategy or the roadmap, right? So this is going to be our focus today. All right. So with that, let's start with vision. And before we actually get into the vision, let me actually break it down for you in the sense, like when you think about, just generally how you build products and kind of the methodologies you should be following. It's typically a good sort of a process or a good sort of philosophy there is to take a look at it in a top-down fashion, starting with a vision, defining a vision, taking your time to build it, defining that North Star. Principles, we don't talk a lot about principles, and I'm going to jump into that today, which are your core values. What matters to you when you think about building products, right? Then getting into the mission, the strategic place, kind of like your roadmap, at the high level strategic place, you're going to have, maybe it's a few years down the line, or maybe it's next year's roadmap or strategic place, and then breaking them down into actual tactical stuff. These are key activities you're going to pursue as a roadmap, and eventually executing and delivering on those, the outcomes and the metrics you're going to follow, which circle around typically your customer metrics, business metrics, technology metrics, perhaps your partner metrics. And these things, even though it's a top-down approach and it's a living thing, it never stops. It is still open to changes, right? It's going to change over time. You might change your vision moving forward some point in time, but by and large, you're going to change your strategy a lot based on the outcomes you're producing, right? So think about when you think about building products, you're getting into a new job and owning a product, or you got promoted and you got more increased ownership of a product portfolio. Always think about setting a good, proper vision, and then everything else will follow. Take that top-down approach. You will appreciate yourself doing it. Your customers will appreciate because you're producing great outcomes. And your organization, the executives will appreciate because you're bringing clarity to them. So top-down approach, big fan of that. So with that, now let's jump into the vision. All right. So vision, you all know that's your destination. That's your end goal, right? What you want to achieve maybe 3 years, 5 years down the line, right? And when you think about vision, kind of the core components of a vision, what it should be, is it should be aspirational. You should never settle with mediocrity. Think about what you want to be great at in 5 years from now, what your product should be great at. It should be achievable. Don't make something like, I want to just build a product, a B2B product that has a social component to it. That doesn't just typically marry well, right? So don't be outrageous, be achievable. Keep it long-term. Vision should be long-term. Typically it should be around 3 years, 5 years down the line. It should be very customer-focused. You should have the elements of who are you building it for? And it should be business aligned. All the key sort of strategic initiatives in your vision should reflect in there. What are the outcomes you're going to produce? So critical that these kind of pillars and the elements be there as part of your vision definition. I also want to caveat that your product vision should never, ever directly, that's an important word here, be your company vision. Your company vision can be miles different, can be close to the product vision, but it's a thing on its own. It applies to products, it applies to finance, operations in the company, and so many other different places. And you cannot just align directly with your company vision. Your product vision is your own vision. It can align in the sense, historically, like when you think about a company vision, okay, we want to go after a certain segment of customer, small to medium business, or we want to go after enterprise. Then your product vision would be, I want to build X, Y, and Z for that particular enterprise customer. Okay, so you kind of can align, but don't directly borrow from the company vision. It just doesn't work well. That's a totally different beast. A great example, since I come from Amazon, and I've studied some of the the visions and the strategies over there, different organizations, how they built it. It's AWS. We all know who AWS is. The reason why AWS has become successful is because they have had a stellar vision. And the vision still exists that they built about 15 years ago. The vision is to build a reliable, scalable, low-cost infrastructure platform. So if you see reliable, scalable, and low cost, those are the strategic pillars, and it's reflected in the vision, right? So that's still aspirational in the word, right? So they want to build it for all the people in the world. So it's aspirational, it's achievable. They've achieved the reliability, scalability, and low cost. And they also are talking about the customer in here as well. We're going to build it for thousands of businesses. These are businesses in 190 countries. So who are they building for? They showcase that in the vision. And their vision has not changed, by the way, in the last 15 years or so. It kind of has stayed the same. So you can see most of the pillars I talked about are already reflected in the AWS's vision. So it's a great statement. And it's kind of like a value proposition statement if you think about it. If you've been to business school, one of the first things you take a marketing class, they teach you how to write a good value prop statement. So essentially a vision statement is your value proposition statement. It has a persona who you're building it for. What are the key strategic pillars? There is a value delivered, and through what channel, to what kind of product are you building? In this case, it's an infrastructure platform. Vision also should be long-term. Like I said, you don't change your vision very often. You don't change your vision every single year, every 2 years. You should stick with your vision for 3 years, 5 years at the very least. It's important that you do that because otherwise you lose focus. You're very unfocused. So keep it long-term. And therefore, it's really important. The onus is on you to craft a really compelling vision and take time to do it. Don't rush into it. Take your time. Understand your customers, understand your business, understand the market, how are the competitors behaving. Do a thorough due diligence, maybe take 3 months. If you're getting into a new job, if you are building a new portfolio or got promoted, take some time to do that. So vision crafting is an art and in science, and it should take some time. You should take some time to do it. All right, so moving forward, something I mentioned earlier is principles, right? We don't often talk about principles when you think generally about products, right? You only focus on vision, kind of strategy, execution pieces. Principles are important. So let's jump into that. Now, what are principles really is they are sort of like these guided signposts. You're going to your destination, but then you need something like this GPS, for you, have the GPS available to you to guide you to get there. Different signposts on the road, how many miles left, you should take a left turn or a right turn, those things. Those are your principles. And when you think about principles, these are really your product's core values. What matters to you, right, as a product? They could be bar raiser. Like, hey, I don't want to settle with mediocre features on the product. I want to be raising the bar with these select number of features. That can be your principle. They can be guardrails like, I want to be within those legal compliance guardrails or privacy and security guardrails. And those are your principles. So principles are super important, and we don't often talk about it. The way I kind of like to put principles as, they help you say no to good ideas so you can really focus on great ones. You should never settle for even the good ideas. Focus on the great ones, and the principles help you get there. Being at Amazon, I can give another really good example of principles, right? Which is the leadership principles. And believe me, These leadership principles, they apply unanimously within Amazon across all of the products, all the key areas: customer obsession, diving deep, thinking big. There is a reason Amazon produces successful products over and over again, is because every product manager that owns a certain domain or area is challenged to start with the customer first as that principle. You do a thorough deep dive with the customer, collect all the data, understand the signals, and which is the diving deep part. You think big. You don't just settle with something like, yeah, I'm just going to build something that the customers will, they're going to decently appreciate. You think about how you delight the customer. How can you delight the customer? What is the one or two hero feature or capabilities you should be building in your product that's going to let your product shine and differentiate in the market and be there sustainable for the long term? So those are the principles that get applied on a day-to-day basis at Amazon. And therefore, what I would recommend you do is figure out a set of principles for your product that matters to you, your team, your organization, that you can apply on a day-to-day basis when it comes to prioritization of your roadmap, what you should be really selecting in your roadmap, whether it is making day-to-day decisions related to, hey, I've got this escalation. Should that matter to me right now, right? So think about, kind of setting those principles up and keeping them. Again, principle is something you should be kind of keeping them as long-term as well. If you look at Amazon, they've never changed the principles in the longest time. They added more things in there, but those principles have stayed intact for the longest time. So pay attention to the principles, set them up. One of the recent examples I can give you is here at TriNet, where I lead products. We care about, one of the principles I can give an example for is, we care about these kind of low touch, time sensitive functionality on a mobile app. And by the way, that is typical to mobile apps, not just at TriNet, but also at Amazon, similar thing we did. Like, you don't just go with building a platform parity between web and mobile. You're very selective of what you put on mobile, right? And that's one of the great principles when you think about building mobile apps. I don't want to just go with a parity with web. I want to build features and capabilities on the mobile app that are going to give the customer the right amount of information for them to make decisions that are time-sensitive decisions, so they can take the decisions right away at their fingertips. And that's a principle, right? Everything else is passable. Everything else like that's not relevant to mobile is passable. So really critical, again, can't emphasize enough. You can set the vision all you want, but if you're not really paying attention to the core values and the principles for your product, you might get distracted in a pretty bad way. You will just start accepting ideas from all different directions, and that's going to clutter your vision and your roadmap, your strategy. So really make sure you set those principles and vet your vision and the strategy the right way. All right, so I talked about vision and the principles. Hopefully that makes sense. The third one, which is the final one in the whole vision and strategy journey, is the actual journey, which is the strategic pillars and the roadmap. We all know about this, very familiar with roadmaps, prioritization, and whatnot. So I'm going to give you a few tips of advice here on how to do it right. My advice based on my experience. And really, when you think about pillars, the strategic place, the roadmaps, that's your journey, right? So what are you actually going to build, right? That aligns with the vision, that's directed by your core principles. What are you going to build? That's your journey. High level, when you think about roadmaps and the strategic place, the pillars, they should all be measurable. Do not build something that you cannot measure on, whether it's business outcomes, customer engagement, whatever it is, right? It needs to be measured by metrics, different kinds of metrics. So make sure you do that. It should be achievable, similar to vision. It kind of directly gets down, right? Top-down approach. It should be achievable. Don't put something on the roadmap that you cannot deliver on. Make sure you feel good about it, comfortable about it. If there is a net new investment to be made, whether it's a piece of technology or a talent that you need to acquire, make sure you do that. Make sure you make a case for it, get it approved, and that's doable. Make sure it's properly prioritized. And prioritization is not a single exercise, folks. You should never be prioritizing between, let's just do a prioritization with engineering and design and call it done. No. The modern world, when you think about customer experience, customer success, it's a unison of building technology products, building services, whether it is strategic services, different kind of consulting services on top of the platform, and several different things that kind of matter to the customer at the end. So make sure your prioritization is evangelized. It's fanned out across the organization to the right stakeholders, and they are plugged into your prioritization exercise. And like I said, it's aligned, right? You should be broadly aligning your strategic plays and your roadmap within the organization, and sometimes even with your customers as well. If you have a customer advisory board, it's important that you run your priorities by your advisory board. If you have a set of partners that you work with and your partners are a key part of your business, make sure you align your roadmap, your strategic plays with your partners as well, all within NDA and all those things that go along with it. So yes, strategic plays, roadmaps, the journey, measurable, achievable, should be prioritized and should be aligned. I love this quote. And this has been said by Thomas Edison, and I kind of just up-leveled it a little bit, added more flavor to it. You know, Thomas Edison said, strategy without execution is hallucination. Totally true. You know, if you build strategies, just let it put there on the shelf, you know, for people to kind of just gaze at, oh, looks beautiful, but you don't pick it up and actually start working on it, it's hallucination, right? But really up-leveling it, if you have a strategy that's not properly defined, you just lose focus and it's pure blindness, right? You don't know what you're doing. So make sure, again, just like vision, make sure that you take the time to define your strategy, your roadmap, starting with the customer, starting with your stakeholders in the company, aligning with them, you know, doing a lot of due diligence, making a recommendation, defining it precisely using business cases, aligning, approving the business case. So those emotions matter, right? And if you don't do that thoroughly, it's pure blindness. You don't know where you're headed, right? Some great example, breaking away from Amazon. This is another company that really admires Airbnb. They do a phenomenal job of crafting strategy, the strategic focuses and the roadmaps, and actually surprisingly, publishing the roadmaps out there in the community. And they have a massive community of, the renters and the actual consumers, right? And they actually do proactively reach out to them and vet their roadmaps with them. It's a company that I would encourage you to follow. Although Airbnb going public now, that might change a little bit because public companies are very careful about their roadmaps, how much they can disclose and they cannot. But it's an interesting one to follow. So great strategies. They're rooted into customer needs, business goals, and market differentiations. From a business standpoint, these three things matter a lot. Make sure you pay attention to those three things. Customer needs, make sure it's aligned with the customer needs. It's aligned with the business goals, which is the corporate OKRs and the corporate vision. And make sure you're differentiating yourself in the market as you go along, right? Also, it's equally important for you to not just kind of throw your foundational work under the rug, right? Make sure it's visible. You're going to focus on some foundational work, the platforming, user experience, APIs, mobile capabilities, so on and so forth, right? So that's a foundational element. But also, so it's important that you show that, kind of like the horizontal element, but also show the growth outcomes as well, right? I mean, that's where the juice lies, right? That's where you make the most sort of value, create more value, make more money out of your products. It's what are your growth strategies on top of those, right? It could be new verticals. It could be new target segments that you're going to go after, right? Something along those lines. New monetization, SaaS capabilities. So that can be another growth pillar. And they should complement each other. You know, they should never be completely orthogonal. Foundational and growth should complement each other. They should plug into each other a lot. So that it should be visible in your strategy when you present that. Your strategy can change. And we all live through that. If you guys are some of your PMs, you've seen this in the past, last year, especially where you had to change your strategy and your roadmap to pivot for topical reasons, right? And pandemic is a great example of it. For example, last year, just really quick, it's pretty public out there, TriNet, we had to pivot our mobile app to produce some capabilities for HR related to, getting access to telehealth information, employee adoption, employee assistance programs, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that you should be willing to make room for in your roadmap, and you have to negotiate that out with your engineering teams, with your stakeholders, with executives. Like, hey, this matters because this is going to help, create more value. It's very topical. So be ready to change your strategy. At the same time, not a vision though. Vision should stay intact. But for topical reasons such as pandemic, totally open to changing a strategy. And everything, all of this stuff should be put together in a nicely gifted with a ribbon on top form in the form of a business case. And that can be done at a small scale, such as a lean canvas if done right. Or you can go all crazy in with something like Amazon PR FAQ. That's a very, kind of very exhaustive way of writing business cases. I encourage you to go do some Google search on that. Really good way of articulating business cases. You should definitely apply common prioritization frameworks such as RICE and Moscow to kind of align and adjust your roadmaps as and when you see fit, right? But at the same time, keep it simple and comprehensible. Don't make it complicated unnecessarily. So that's the strategic pillars in the roadmap. Some examples. This is a template that I'm gonna put out there. Feel free to use it. It's a great way of putting the world on a map, so to speak, for your product. Your vision on top, your simple one-line value prop statement talking about the pillars and who are you building it for, the customer problem you're solving, your foundational work that you're gonna do, maybe in next year, maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, that directly aligns with your vision. It could be addressing core capabilities, building great UX, maybe building API, mobile, and ML capable, and so on and so forth. And then your growth pillars at the bottom, right? This is the vertical pillar, which could be a solution-based growth, vertical-based growth, role-based growth. So many different ways of creating growth pillars. For example, at Amazon, one of our growth pillars was to build more add-on services on top of Amazon keys, such as dog walking, home maintenance, and so on and so forth. And we pursued those things. So that's just another example over there, when it comes to growth. So great framework to apply, use it right away if you want to pick this one up. Another one that I actually love to use, and I kind of borrow bits and pieces and best practices from RICE, Moscow, is a prioritization framework that I personally use, which is on the left side, you got your pillars, right? Your strategic pillars, your initiatives in each pillar. And I talked about earlier that you should be always paying attention to customer, business, and differentiating your product. But the new one that I've added is the technology and the scoping aspect. You've seen this before in some of the frameworks, right? So really high level with a customer, your goal is to solve most intense pain points, creating more value, focusing on verticals that matter, driving customer satisfaction, NPS impact. And you should always be looking upwards, kind of up leveling that customer impact, right? All the time. Similarly with business impact, whether it is SaaS revenues, win ratio, when it comes to sales and converting your prospects, whether it is operational savings and reduced penalties, legal penalties. Again, these are definite business impact you should be looking to build up. Differentiation, looking to build up again. What level are you achieving? Who are your competitors? Who are you going against, right? Is it a protected differentiation? Is it defensible? What kind of market segments you're after, right? So again, up level as much as possible. And then finally, technology. This is the more down level stuff in the sense you should always be focusing on building features that create the most customer, business, and differentiation value, but low investment, right? So low hanging fruits to focus on first. However, again, if there is a incredible amount of value you're creating that has incredible level of complexity and you need more technology investment, absolutely by all means, make that investment, do those trade-offs. So yeah, so high level, the goal here is to just give you guys a simple framework to kind of measure your initiatives in each pillar, how to look again, the top-down approach. When it comes down to the strategic pillars and the initiatives in each of those pillars, how can you do the proper prioritization across these key sort of attributes that matter a lot, okay? All right, now on to some closing thoughts. Before you craft any vision or strategy, make sure you do a thorough customer, market, and business due diligence. The onus is on you to do all that. And I typically go with a 80-20 rule when it comes to the sort of the confidence that you have on the data that you are collecting, right? Quantity to quality, it doesn't matter what form it is, ideally both. but you at least got to have that 80% of a gut level confidence that you've achieved, and you feel good about that. Sometimes it comes by practice and doing this more often. Secondly, I would say learn how to say no to good ideas and focus on truly great ones. Be a critique of any ideas that come in your direction. And typically, when you have a well-established vision and the principles and the kind of the strategic pillars that you're defined, you kind of automatically learn how to say no because typically they do not align well with those key attributes. So make sure that your principles and your vision guide you in picking up really, truly great ideas to focus on. The next one I would say is, continuously, again, align your vision and strategy with your execs and your stakeholders. It's important. Strategy without proper alignment is a failure, in my opinion. So make sure that you truly align it, apply the right prioritization frameworks, and bring that clarity that everyone is looking for and counting on you to bring it on board, bring everyone on board, and have that sort of pathway lit for them and for yourself as well. And finally, I would say that, be ready to pivot. Pivoting is important in any business, right? And applies to products as well. Know what your vision is at the North Star. Typically, that does not change a whole lot. But you totally should be open to pivoting strategy. For example, the pandemic really allowed a lot of businesses and out there to actually change their product strategy, that what they're offering to their clients, because everything was just changing so fast. However, the true North Star and the vision almost always stayed the same. So those are the closing thoughts. Hopefully you all enjoyed this webinar and the frameworks that I proposed. So please feel free to pick them up. I'm going to be publishing this on my personal blog, productforlife.com as well. Feel free to visit that. Some of the links I provided over here as well. And feel free to contact me if you have any questions as well. Happy to answer them. It's been my pleasure being here to talk to you all. And let's stay connected. Thank you.